cleanup of environmental hazards at the Department of Energy's Oak Ridge site is an issue that affects us all. DOE is working to address the issue, but it needs citizen input. One way you can help is to take part in the meetings of the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board, a volunteer citizens panel. By attending meetings, you can learn about the cleanup program and voice your opinions. Join us in making our area an even better place to live. For more information, call toll-free or visit us online.
Thank you for coming, and welcome the public and the board members to another fine board meeting tonight. As you can see, I'm not Maggie Owens. She's on her second honeymoon, she says, so you have me for the evening. I'd like to remind everyone to use their name tags and badges and speak into the microphones. And members should remember that when they want to be recognized, to use their tents, their name tents. And during the presentation, the comments will be first from the board members, then the public, which we appreciate that they go to a microphone or one will be handed to them. And there's an emergency exit to the right and the rear of the building, down the stairs to my right here. And if you need assistance, just let one of the staff members or board members, and they'll assist you in the event of an emergency. So our next meeting will be December 14th, and the presentation is yet to be determined. So with that in mind, also I'd like to have you note a change in the agenda for tonight. We want to, we're going to delete item 1B for the evening. It does not necessarily mean that member is not coming on the board. It's just we're not going to do that this evening. So the current 1C becomes 1B. With that, I'd like to have Sue Cange come up, and we have a presentation of a service award for the federal coordinator, Pat Halsley, and then one for Ron Murphy, our former chairman of 2 years. It seems like 5 though, but and that is a compliment. I'll tell you, that really is a compliment. Really is. Okay, Sue.
Okay, so, thank you very much. Do I need it? I do. Okay.
Yes.
They say I do, so I do. I normally have a loud voice that carries, but anyway. So I am so happy to see that Pat has agreed to join us, at least for the beginning of the meeting tonight. I know that several of the board members are new, but certainly everybody is aware of the dedication that Pat has shown to the SSAB for 9 years. Is that right? 9 years? That's like the 2 years versus 5 years, the 9 years versus the 14 years. Anyway, Pat, on behalf of DOE, and also I think I can speak for the board as well, everybody wants to thank you for your dedication, your commitment, your hard work. You were so instrumental in getting so many things executed and implemented through the board, and we just really want to thank you and congratulate you on all your successes and wish you well with your new challenges, because you know we don't let people go away without having new challenges. And if you would come up here, I would like to present a plaque to you in appreciation. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to see this, but it says, presented in appreciation to Miss Patricia Halsey, who was the federal coordinator. It says, for 9 years of dedicated service to the OR SSAB. So Miss Pat, sorry about that, I thought you were going to come around the other side. It's got some good pictures representing all the various people that you've worked with and all the work that you've done, and we want to all thank you again for your hard work and commitment.
Thank you.
All right.
And we've got another presentation for Pat from the whole board. It's suitable for framing, I suppose, because it is framed. A picture of all our smiling faces, and I hope that I know you can recognize all of these guys. So for the most part, so that you don't forget us.
I will never forget this group, and I will be back at time to time, depending on the.
Come early and come often.
I will.
Yes, she's going to check up on everybody.
I will.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So there is cake in the room that we're going to do at break time. Yes. So I don't want everyone to rush in there, but I know that Pat was not planning to spend all evening with us, so please feel free to get yourself a piece of cake. All right. All right, and one more presentation. We have an outgoing chair, Mr. Ron Murphy. Ron, you've been the chair for the last 2 years. We haven't known each other very long, but in the short time that we have known each other, I get your commitment and the hard work that you have done to help lead the SSAB through the past 2 years. I understand there were 20 recommendations. It seems, yeah, that's very impressive, very impressive. So many recommendations came through during your tenure. We're delighted that you're going to continue to be a member of the board and continue to participate, and I'm sure everybody will be looking to you for continued leadership. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Yeah, let me have the phone.
And there we go.
Just a last couple words for Pat and for Ron. Pat has really been very instrumental for this board. She's been a moving force for it. Many of you all are new and haven't evidenced Pat's momentum in moving the board and helping members. She'll be sorely missed, but we have a new member to replace her, and I understand she's just as moving as Pat is, and we look forward to working with her very closely. And as for Ron Murphy, I remember when I came on the board, I worked on a committee with Lance, and Lance is here tonight, a former member, and both he and Ron helped me personally and helped the other new board members at that time, Betty Jones and Maggie Owens. And while Ron was the chairman, we did do a lot of things under Ron's leadership. It was amazing the leadership that he provided, and we'll be forever thankful for Ron's leadership, and he'll be sorely missed. Ron? Well, thank you. So let's go to our presentation. Tonight's presentation will be an overview of the hot cells cleanup project at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. And the presenter is Laura Wilkerson, and she's the federal director project director for EM work at RNL and Y12, and is currently responsible for over $630 million of the Recovery Act work.
I think we need to do item 2 and then 3 first.
Okay. I have been corrected, and when you're new doing these things, Laura, you're just going to have to wait in the wings. You're going. We didn't want. We'll get to you. We didn't want to let Dave talk last week. Now we have to make you wait. Okay, let's go to the comments from the DDFO.
Okay, that's me again.
Yes.
Just a few things to let you know what's been happening in the last several weeks since we last met, and also a few things about what's on the horizon for us. We were very fortunate. I think it was last week. Time has a way of blending, but we had the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Environmental Management, Ms. Tracy Mustin, come down and spend a day and a half with us here touring all three of the sites, ETTP, Y12, and ORNL. She followed Dave Huizinga, the Assistant Secretary, and wanted to really put her eyes on all the things that we have going on across the reservation. So it was an excellent meeting. It was an excellent opportunity to introduce Tracy to all that we've accomplished and all of the challenges that we still have before us. And I think just from my own perspective, I have a very positive feeling about the Dave and Tracy team in terms of leading EM successfully over the next several years. So I'm quite encouraged by that, and hopefully it will be a good thing for the program as a whole as well as for Oak Ridge. Tracy came down to be a keynote speaker at the ATIBA conference that was held in Knoxville last week. And so we also had an opportunity, John Eschenberg and myself were also on panels for that conference. And so that was a good opportunity for us to interact with a lot of the subcontracting community that works here on the reservation as well as at other DOE sites. Just a few words about budget and or funding. As most of you I'm sure know, that the department is currently operating under a continuing resolution, which means we don't yet have an enacted budget for fiscal year 2012, which started on October 1. That continuing resolution will expire on November 18th. That's at the end of next week. Don't know whether something will be enacted before then, but our suspicion, of course, is that the continuing resolution will be extended. And so we will continue to operate at the lower of the House and or Senate marks until we do have an enacted budget. So that's what's going on in the front with regard to funding. Wanted to also mention that next week we have our meeting for historic preservation of the K-25 building and or site, depending on your opinion on that. That meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 17th at 9 a.m. Is it here or is it over? It's here. And the public is welcome if any of you are interested. We have submitted a draft mitigation plan. I think you all have received a copy of that. We sent it out to all of the signatory and consulting parties, and we will be meeting with them to discuss that draft plan and to develop a path forward for coming to a final agreement on the mitigative measures that we'll take to honor the history of the K-25 activities. So that's happening again on Thursday, the 17th at 9 a.m. here at the DOE Information Center. And that's it for me.
All right, thank you very much, Sue. Dave?
No comments this month, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Connie Jones is not available this evening. We'll go to our TDEC representative, John Owsley.
Thank you, Ed. I too have no announcements.
Okay, thank you. We will move now to our public comments period.
The public comment period is now open. Dave Miller? Oh, no, okay. Norman Mulvaney? Please state your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Norman Mulvaney. I'm the chair of the Local Oversight Committee Citizens Advisory Panel. and the vice chair of the Local Oversight Committee. A former member of the board. I was here for 6 years, and I was also present in 1997 to present at almost every meeting. Tonight we're going to hear the good news about the cells out there, and Laura's going to give us the good information. And I'd be very interested in seeing how they put the ARRA money to work in this case, because that was probably a relatively coup. Okay, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to comment? Please state your name and keep your comments to 2 minutes.
My name is Joe Carson. I work for DOE as a safety professional. I'm an extremely concerned DOE safety professional. I have tried for several years all the processes that DOE has for safety professionals to have their concerns addressed, and DOE has not provided me access to any of them. A few weeks ago, my manager said I should try to get Congress engaged in trying to get my Congress to intercede with DOE to have my concerns responsibly addressed. So I'm now trying to do that. To get Congress to move, you need to have public support. So I'm reaching out here to the SSAB. In 3 minutes, I really cannot go into any detail with my concerns, except I don't think DOE has got a safety-conscious work environment. I do not think DOE or contractor employees are adequately protected from reprisal for bringing forward concerns. And I will share with you that when concerned contractor employees come to me, I have to basically say, look the other way if you can live with yourself, or as a DOE Employees Concerns Council stated to me, Joe, think of yourself first. I don't think that's the right answer in DOE. I don't think it's the right answer for the community. My concerns are not so much focused in DOE, they're focused on the civil service and civil service laws designed to protect any concerned federal employee from retribution. So I'd like to, my suggestion or my ask of the SSAB is that 1 or 2 of your members spend a few hours listening to me and perhaps report back to the SSAB if they think it's appropriate that the SSAB intercede on behalf of my concerns. My concerns, there's no he said, she said. It's all about law. There's no undisputed facts. It's all about how laws are to be interpreted. So that's my request is if the SSAB deems appropriate to, someone to listen to me and then see what they think and bring it back to the SSAB. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. We appreciate that. Just so that you know, I don't want to lead you on or anything of that nature. Our charter is pretty clear. The board's charter is pretty clear and concise. It does not, this does not fall within its realm, but if you believe it does, if you have any written documents or anything of that nature and you want to submit it to our staff, they will forward it to the appropriate committee.
And the staff person
would be tonight's staff is Pete. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to comment? All right, then. As a Citizens Advisory Board to the Department of Energy on environmental cleanup, we want to encourage the community at large to attend and participate at our board and committee meetings. If you are unable to attend, please send in your questions and comments to the address shown. Appropriate comments and questions will be read during the public comment section of the SSAB meeting and will be given the same consideration by the board and DOE as those given in person. Meeting schedules and various ways to communicate with the ORSSAB can be obtained by calling 241-4583 or 241-4584 or by visiting our website. And the public comment period is now closed.
Thank you very much. Now we will move forward and go back to Laura Wilkerson. I had half her introduction done, but Laura comes to us to present the tonight's presentation on the hot cells cleanup project at Oronell. She has 20 years experience with DOE Oak Ridge managing technical programs and projects in all major DOE mission areas, including science, nuclear energy, and EM. And she is a certified level 3 contracting officers representative and level 2 federal projects director, and holds a BS in industrial engineering. With that, would you help me welcome Laura Wilkerson?
Is this ready? Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to give you an update on the activities that we have going on in the hot cells project. The scope of the hot cells project includes 2 facilities, building 3026 C and D, and building, I'll point them here, 3038, which are located in the central campus area of ORNL. As you can see, these facilities are located in a pretty congested area of the laboratory, and most importantly, they're in close proximity to science, research, and support activities. So that underscores the importance of not only completing this work, but making sure that we complete it in an efficient and safe manner. So first, I'm going to give you an overview of what I'm going to be talking about in regards to building 3026. I will give you a brief history of the facility since its construction in the early 1940s. That's some vintage pictures of the building. Then I will talk about the demolition of the exterior structure of the building, which from now on I'm going to refer to as the wooden superstructure, which is basically the building shell that housed 6 hot cell structures. And then lastly, I will talk about the project that we have ongoing today to address the hot cell structures that remain after the demolition of the superstructure. So this is basically the way that the facility looks now. I'm not going to go through all of these. Basically, what I want to note from this slide is that the building is actually 2 adjoining facilities divided by a common firewall. Building 3026C is on the west side of the facility and 3026D on the east side. And that is important because there are some differences in what we have to address in both sides of the facility. The other thing, in general, this facility was constructed to support processing of highly radioactive isotopes or highly radioactive materials. And again, not to go over this in any detail, but to point out that over the approximately 50-year period that the facility was operational, there were various missions that were supported that were different for each facility over the years. So there were some adjustments over the years and the use of different radioactive materials within the cells that today present, challenges to the decontamination and cleanup work. The building was basically put in the surveillance and maintenance program in the mid-1990s, and you cannot see it from this picture, but this wooden superstructure, it's basically covered by a siding material that doesn't allow you to look at the deterioration of the facility. But over the years, the building significantly deteriorated to the extent that it made it a significant challenge not only to access the interior of the facility for characterization, but also to ensure that we didn't have a fire hazard in the facility. So in the 2008 timeframe, we set about going forward with the stabilization and demolition of that superstructure to address that hazard. The scope of the stabilization of the interior of the facility included addressing the hot cells inside the facility, which involved removing the master-slave manipulators from the hot cells and fogging the interior of the hot cells with a wetting material to control contamination. And then in 2009, that demolition project was undertaken very carefully because the hot cell structures remain and they have contamination and radioactive materials in them. So we needed to be very deliberate in conducting the demolition activities to make sure that we protected those cells from the demolition equipment and the activities going on outside. So in 2010, the facilities that remain after the demolition, these 6 hot cell structures, were coated with a polyurea material, basically not only to protect the cells from the elements, but also to ensure containment of contamination until we can complete the demolition project. So again, just a closer picture of what the cell facilities look today. And to point out again, this is the C side to the western side of the facility, which has 4 structures, and this is the D side, which has 2 hot cell structures. We have made significant progress in preparing these facilities for demolition, mainly on the C side of the facility. So on the C side, we have 2 of the structures, the tritium cell and the counting room, which are 100% ready for demolition. And that involved decontamination and removal of legacy materials in the interior of the cells that included lead and other type hot cell equipment and materials. And the remaining 2 structures on that side are 85% complete for demolition. So the current plan is to have the C side completely ready for demolition by the end of this calendar year, to plan to fully complete the demolition of that C side at the beginning of calendar year 2012. On the D side, the story is a little bit different. When the contractor took over the facility, they proceeded with conducting some initial characterization in the interior of these structures, mainly on this facility to the most eastern side of the building that is known as cell AB. When they did that, they encountered radiation levels with that limited data. They encountered radiation levels that were significantly higher than what we had anticipated for the facility. So basically, they proceeded to suspend the physical activities on the D side of the facility to evaluate alternatives and approaches to proceed with addressing that facility under these different conditions. And they completed that technical alternative analysis a couple of weeks ago and submitted a proposal to DOE that includes, of course, cost changes and schedule changes to the project that we are currently evaluating. In parallel with that, they proceeded again a couple of weeks ago, and after a lot of practicing and effort to make sure that they did it safely, to collect additional correlation data from the interior of the hot cell. And as you can see, because the hot cell windows have been coated, there's really no visual access to the interior of the cell, and the master-slave manipulators that are typically used to access and manipulate things in the interior of the cell are no longer there. So they're having to rely on long-reach tools that are put through ports that are left on the cell, and do that very carefully, and also use cameras to be able to look inside the facility. So it's tedious and complicated work that presents challenges in and of itself. So they're completing that characterization, the second phase of the characterization this week. And when we get that data back, we will be able to conduct additional analysis to be able to safely proceed with the work in this D side, and also to confirm the levels of contamination that we found with the initial characterization data that we collected. So basically, we believe that the high radiation levels are associated with loose material rather than being uniformly spread throughout the interior of the cell. So the hope is that we will be able to remove those highly radioactive items through, again, using remote reach tools or long reach tools, And after we do that, we will be able to lower the radiological conditions within the facility and more readily be able to deal with it. But again, that's just part of this very deliberate plan that we have to follow to make sure that this is done safely and securely. So again, we plan to proceed with demolition of the seaside structures by early 2012. The D side, we expect to have it demolition ready under the current proposed approach, which again, we're still evaluating, but just to give you an idea, that will be happening in early fall, late summer to early fall of 2012, with completion in early calendar year 2013. So that will make this area in Central Campus available to be turned over to ORNL to support their mission activities, perhaps as parking area or something else that they may need it to. The other facility within the hot cells project is building 3038. As you can see, this facility, it's a more robust structure. It's made out of brick, and even though it's old, doesn't present the challenges and concerns that we had on 3026. Basically from the same 1940 vintage, and supporting similar types of radioactive material processing. And the main goal for this facility is to remove the legacy materials and contamination that remain inside of the facility. We have made some progress to that end. The facility has begun the legacy material removal and has completed the first phase of that. They're in the process of doing additional characterization to address the most, significant contamination items and radioactive materials. They have a contractor that has been mobilized to conduct asbestos removal activities, and those activities also present challenges because they're going to be taking place in a radiation area, so they don't only have to deal with the asbestos hazards, but also with the radiation hazards. So again, doing the planning and have also completed the shutdown or disconnect of the mechanical and electrical systems that support the facility to get ready for demolition. Again, the main goal here is to remove the legacy materials. We have what we call a buyback project on the Recovery Act, which means that if we realize efficiencies in the legacy material removal work and we have money left, we will be able to demolish the building. But again, we're not sure at this point, unless we complete the legacy material removal, on whether or not we'll be able to get to demolition under the Recovery Act project. That's all I had, and turn it over to you for questions.
Thank you. Jimmy?
3026, what was the wisdom not to clean the cells before taking the building down?
Well, as I said, the wooden superstructure was very badly deteriorated, and we were concerned about accessing. We were even precluded from accessing the interior of the building to collect characterization on those cells. So there were hazards associated with entering the building that precluded us from doing it that way.
So much easier.
Okay, Chuck, thank you.
Was there a reason the manipulators were removed before the work and maneuvering that needed to be done inside the cells? Was there a reason the manipulators were removed and now they're having to use manual reach tools?
The manipulators were removed because that was part of making sure that the cells were stable until we could get the project in place for D&D in the cells, and then came Recovery Act, and we had the opportunity to do that. I should say that part of the plan of dealing with those cells is to reinstall the legacy manipulators. Those manipulators were saved, so we didn't get rid of them. So we will refurbish them to make sure that they're usable, and we will reinstall them in the cell to allow this work to proceed.
No, so you did save them?
Yes.
Are there any other questions? Greg?
What is DOE's estimate to take this to completion of cost? Cost estimate to bring it to completion?
Yeah, we have an independent cost estimate, but because we're under procurement action right now where we are using that estimate to evaluate the contractor proposal and the contractors are here, I'm not able to disclose that, but we should know, we should be able to tell you, hopefully within the near future, what, the cost and schedule impacts are as soon as we complete that evaluation.
Ron. Steve, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Pardon me if I missed this, but what is the ultimate fate of the hot cells? Will they be dismantled? How will they be moved? Moved to where? And so on.
The plan is to demolish them using demolition type equipment, basically excavators with hammers, giant hammers connected to them. That work will be done on site. The sea side of the facility, we will be able to do that without having any enclosure on it because we meet the radiation criteria to allow that to happen. On the D side, we plan to build an enclosure around the cells so that we can ensure that we can control contamination related to the demolition, and that will happen in the enclosure, and the waste will be packaged and disposed at NNSS, correct? Some to EMWMF.
Is that a standard practice among people who dispose of hot cells? Or are we learning as we're going along?
Do you want to answer that?
It's a pretty standard practice to demolish these buildings. Well, you characterize them first to make sure you meet the WAC attainment for either NNSS or the old NTS or EMWMF. So it's not really a learn as you go. It's a standard process that everybody uses to characterize waste so you can segregate it during demolition and safely dispose of it.
And finally, do we know currently what the radioisotopes are that we'll experience, or is that something yet to be determined?
We know the radioisotopes, they're associated with fission products, and what we don't know is the precise amount of each radioisotope that we have inside the cell until we complete collecting this additional data and get the results back.
Well, now, I promise this is my last. Are we dealing strictly with fission products or with transuranic?
Can you?
It's the strontium-90 and cesium-137.
No transuranic.
Right.
Okay. It'll be Ron Murphy, then Dave, and then Gloria. Ron?
I mean, that was my question. Is all of the material, particularly from cell, the one in 3026D, going to meet the WAC criteria for the EMWMF, or is it going to have to be because of this other material that apparently was not characterized earlier that will have to go to NNS?
I guess until we complete the characterization, we won't know whether it meets the waste acceptance criteria or not. So we are planning, both routes, if you will.
I mean, I guess hindsight would be great. You took the manipulator arms off and then tore the building down. Now you can't get back in it to get it characterized without great difficulty, or to remove whatever this is that's in there that's causing this problem.
I
as taken the building down and left the manipulator arms on, even if you had to put a temporary enclosure in place, which you're going to have to do anyway to demolish the building.
Right.
Yeah.
Poorly planned.
David? No? Okay. Gloria?
I heard that probably sampling will be taken using the tools, right? Because we don't have manipulators, so you have to go into the cell. What's the difference between now the sampling compared to previous? I'm thinking that now this house is so big. Are you still going inside to just get some samples, or you're using some other tools like taking pictures so you can see the hot spot or hot before you take samples? Because if you just take samples, how do you know where to go to get a sample? The house is so big. So what's the difference of about the characterization compared to the previous now that have been done for so many years? So you can have confidence that this time you can take out those highly contaminated particles or before you can do further work.
Yeah, the condition of the facility when the wood superstructure was in place was really not good to have people safely access it to collect characterization data. So what we did with the characterization was not use the manipulators. The manipulators will be used to try to get the material removed from the cell. The characterization was basically samples of water that is at the bottom of the hot cell that were collected with these long reach tools, if you will. And then we did swipes of the surfaces inside the hot cell to collect the radioactive contamination data to send to the lab.
I probably didn't make myself very clear. I thought those probably have done previously. Maybe sample number is not enough. What I'm saying is,
Yes.
are there other methods like taking like pictures or those?
Yeah, they are going.
So you can identify
Did you put
locations
a
or-
camera? I think the first time they put a camera inside the hot cell when they were doing the initial characterization. The data that they collected at that time was limited. It was just a handful of samples. So that's why they're going back now, also with cameras and collecting the additional information because that initial data indicated that the conditions were worse than we had anticipated.
Okay, thank you. Steve? Okay, Chuck?
You referenced cameras. What kind of cameras?
Can you address that?
I'm not sure the actual brand of cameras, but we put them in the ports so we could guide our long reach tools in to collect the samples. We had another port with direct reading instrumentation so we could sort of focus the sampling on the hotter spots and identify those things.
Have you, and perhaps you've considered it and dismissed it, in commercial nuclear there's a fairly commonly used tool that takes a photograph like a picture, only what it's really seeing is radiation, and you can see all of your hot spots, and perhaps you've used something of that sort.
They
I know
did.
what you're talking about.
I've seen those pictures, so I know they did.
Yeah.
I don't know what the camera is called.
One last question. You referenced water. Where did the water come from?
Good question. We don't know.
Well, one would think these are fairly secure cells, and it's kind of surprising to find water in them.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Yeah, it seems to me that we could make a recommendation to DOE not to ever take the manipulators out of a hot cell until that cell is cleaned up. This seems so ridiculous to me as to the process under which this was done that I just think it's a shame that it wasn't cleaned up before the manipulators were taken out. We need to make a strong recommendation to that.
Yeah. David?
Is this on? Yeah.
You know where the water came from, too.
Well, we know where the water came from. We don't know how it got in. Just to back up just a little bit to make sure people understand the status of the building. We're talking about a building that had holes in the roofs, trees growing through the roof, structural beams that had collapsed and were falling down, and that had been deemed unenterable. We could no longer go in and maintain the building. The fire suppression system in some places had been snapped in half by falling beams. The Ornell Fire Department's plan of action should the building catch on fire, we removed all the combustibles out, but it was still a wooden structure, was to stand back and control spread of fire to other facilities. So it was a building that was a real problem that needed to come down quickly, or we could reasonably expect it to come down on its own. You could not take that building down and protect those manipulators. So what Ornell did when they did the building work was they went in and stabilized the hot cells, removed the manipulators for the purpose of protecting them for future use if necessary, and then do their best to ensure that what they left in place, the hot cells, were sufficiently stable to last for, I think the thinking was about 5 years, in the hope that we would come up with money within that time frame to come in and finish the job for the hot cells. As Laura pointed out, it turned out that the money came a lot earlier. So that's why we're pulling everything back in and doing the job. The sequencing of the job was largely a function of the condition of the building, which was bad at the outset. If we'd taken no action on the building, good chance we'd have seen the manipulators sheared off. That was actually a concern at the time, that something was going to happen. For example, a beam might fall and puncture through one of those glassed windows, or shear off a manipulator, or do something that created a direct communication between the inside of the cell and the outside of the cell. So maybe that helps people understand why we sequenced the job the way we did. The water, in all likelihood, came from the sky and through those holes in the roof. Yeah, rainwater. And some of the loading, I'm not real familiar with the configuration of the cell. I know there are ways of loading things into it from above. Those are generally pretty well sealed. A reasonable hypothesis would be that over time some water got inside. It's also possible humidity effects and condensation led to some of the water in the cell, but one way or another it was there, and we've got to deal with it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Pete, would you? Yes, sir.
Laura, I'm really interested in why the characterization missed all these hot spots the first time around.
The characterization did not miss the hot spots. The characterization indicated that they are hot spots, but we had to make some assumptions as to how the contamination is distributed within the cell. And that's why we needed to do this additional characterization, to collect additional data, to have a sufficient data set to be able to do the analysis that we need to do.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Sue.
Hi, Susan Gowrecki, Executive Director of the Local Oversight Committee. This project is another example of DOE letting their buildings just fall down once they stop having any sort of mission. And we've seen this a number of times where they don't adequately maintain them and put on roofing as needed, even when they're scheduled for D&D, and what happens is it turns into a health and safety nightmare and a potential for exposure and environmental releases, and we've seen this with K25 and other structures at the various plants. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, the SSAB has put in a recommendation in the past regarding maintenance of buildings, and I think you need to be holding DOE accountable for this, because in the long run it increases their cost for cleanup, and it increases the hazard and the health and safety issues. And as far as protecting the hot cells after the building comes down, it would have been a simple enough matter to put a rub tent up over them, and that would have kept them out of the weather, so that certainly could have been done. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Are there any other comments? Well, we'd like to thank Laura for her presentation, and very informative, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again.
We'll
okay?
Thank you.
With our next item, are there any additions to the agenda? There are no additions to the agenda. I call upon our Secretary, Chuck Jensen.
Mr. Juarez, I've reviewed the meeting minutes, and they seem to reflect the business that was transacted in the previous meeting in October. And unless there's other corrections or recommendations, I make a motion that they be approved as stand, with a single technical correction that Spencer pointed out today. On the list of attendees, he has some titles to change, but as far as the minutes themselves, they seem to be accurate.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise their right hand. Motion's, okay, all those opposed? The motion is made, is passed. Thank you, Chuck. We are going to have a presentation it's from Steve Stoll and supported by Ron Murphy on the preferred mitigation plan for the site interpretation of East Tennessee Technology Park. And you heard Sue mention in her comments that there will be a meeting here at 9 o'clock on November the 17th. And I'd like you to listen to this presentation, and the comments that have been put together. And Ron will explain what the process will be, and this is not going to be a recommendation. I want to make that clear. Okay? So, Steve, you want to go ahead and go through this? Okay.
Thank you, Ed. By way of background, you know of the mitigation plan that has recently been issued by the Department of Energy with regard to memorializing the K-25 effort. I think each of us on the board has received that plan by email. I don't know that you've had a chance to look at it, but Ron and I are going to briefly review it, compare it to the recommendations that were made by this board in March of this year, so that we can see really what the parallelism is between the position that the board took back in March, many of you were not here at that time, and the position that DOE is currently taking with regard to recommendation as to how to proceed at K-25. We will see a very high degree of parallelism between the position that the board took back in March and the currently issued mitigation plan. And our purpose tonight is to present that information to the board and very simply ask for concurrence from the board, if you feel that way, so that at the time of the consulting parties meeting, which was scheduled for tomorrow, is now scheduled for a week from tomorrow. So at that time, we can go forth and at least reasonably represent the position of the board if that is necessary during the consulting parties meeting. And the consulting parties meeting is a group convened by DOE, a group of interested parties, including the City of Oak Ridge, Friends of Ornell, the SSAB board, and a number of other organizations which provide input to DOE on this issue about commemorating the K-25 effort. So, if it's clear where we are and where we're going, we'll walk through this fairly quickly. And Ron, if you want to get up here and we can do a song and dance, or whatever you prefer. Okay. By way of history, back in 2005, DOE signed a memorandum of understanding, memorandum of agreement with the signatory parties to the K-25 memorialization effort. In 2007, we don't have this set up as a PowerPoint presentation because of shortness of time, so I'm just going to kind of walk through the verbiage. Each of you has a copy at your desk there of what we're going to see here. So in 2007, DOE requested input from a variety of different parties, including the SSAB, on how to best memorialize K-25 over at ETTP when it became apparent that all of the provisions that had been laid out and agreed to in 2005 could not be met. And so DOE came forth and said, help us out here, give us some input on what we can do to properly commemorate the K-25 effort during the war, Second World War, and the Cold War. And the SSAB responded with a specific recommendation, 167, in which the SSAB, by a majority of vote, said, yes, we support the concept of using the north end of the K-25 building as a memorial site. The north end was what had been desired by a number of parties locally here. It was a part of the building that would be left and renovated to some degree and would serve as the basis for a memorial effort, a museum, if you will, whatever one wished to call it. So the SSAB, by majority vote, supported that concept. There was a group of SSAB members, I think 4 or 5 total, who said, hey, we don't personally feel that supporting the north end as the site for this museum is the best way to go. It's very costly. There may be some safety issues, there are timing issues, and so on. And we issued a minority opinion that said, hey, we're all in favor of memorializing K-25, but we think a more modest approach, a smaller building, less upfront cost, less capital cost total, less maintenance, less manpower involved, and so on, is the way to go. And so a minority opinion was submitted along with the majority vote, recommendation 167, which went to DOE. When it was announced by DOE that the North Tower could not be salvaged in 2008, I believe that was, the SSAB revisited the position that it had taken and really basically adopted the position of the minority report and issued a new set of recommendations, which went in as recommendation 176. Then, about a year ago, almost exactly, in 2011, DOE issued 2 consultants' reports. These were consulting firms that had been under contract to the Department of Energy to, one, advise DOE on the stability of the North Tower, because there were some still thoughts that the North Tower could be salvaged with enough effort and could serve as a home base for a museum. So one report centered strictly on that. The second report dealt not with the stability of the north end of the K-25 building, but more with the entire concept of heritage tourism here in Oak Ridge, how K-25, regardless of what is developed out there, might fit into the heritage tourism approach. And it recommended, among other things, that a hub and spoke approach be taken in the tourism industry here, with the hub being something like AMSI. It did not specify what the hub should be. That's where tourists would come, learn something about the Manhattan Project, the Cold War, the history of Oak Ridge, and then they would go out to a spoke like at K-25 or the graphite reactor or the Alexander Inn or whatever, a number of spokes, and see more specifically how each entity fits into the larger, broader picture. And so these 2 reports were issued, and SSAB came back and said, let's take a look at these reports, and compare them to the previous recommendation had in recommendation 176, I think it was. And so we did that, and we issued another recommendation back in, I think, March of this year, and that recommendation compared the consultants' reports versus the position that the SSAB had previously taken. And we found a very high degree of concurrence between what the consultants said, at least in broad general terms, and what the SSAB had said. So there seemed to be coincidentally concurrence here, and that was kind of the last thing that was heard of this until the mitigation plan came out within the last month. And so a word went out to all of you as board members. Would you like to act in an ad hoc capacity to review the mitigation plan, review the position that the SSAB had taken previously, see kind of how things compare, and Ron and I ended up doing this. So what you see is the product of our fertile minds here. So, the way we'll walk through this, and pardon me, I'll try to be very quick about it. I don't want to overlook details. If you have some questions, please feel free to ask. We look back, first of all,